We're on the countdown of going live right
now. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Here we go now. Think this is much better. Okay. All right. Welcome to our live tonight, guys, where we have a special host tonight, Maqueita Hibbert. Is that how I say your name? I don't want to butcher your name.
It's Maqueita. But pretty close, Maqueita Hibbert.
Okay. So our topic for tonight is we'll be exploring different Canadian immigration programs and pathways.
All right.
Maqueita. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Makita. I know you're a registered Canadian immigration consultant here, and you have been doing this for a while. So let us know, give us a little bit more background information about yourself.
All right. So as you said, I am a registered Canadian immigration consultant. Recently acquired the additional IRB, meaning that I can now practice, licensed to practice also before the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada. So I work with individuals who are new immigrants who want to move to Canada and those who are already inside Canada wanting to gain their permanent resident status. So I work with international students, workers, those who are seeking to bring family members here to visit or to live permanently through different immigration programs, which we're going to get into. So those are the individuals that I work with. When a lot of people hear that, oh, I'm an immigration consultant, their initial reaction is usually that I work for the government. And they are some people are hesitant, of course, because, you know, especially if they're illegal in the country and you hear immigration, you know, the ears go up. But I always say, I work for the people. So my goal and my job, which I do, is to help individuals, you know, with their Canadian immigration process. It can be difficult, it can be confusing. And that's why people like me are here, so that we can help those who are seeking that immigration pathway, how to get there, and those who may already be here, not knowing where to turn, what to do, help them, you know, figure out what their next steps are to eventually gain that permanent resident status.
Awesome, awesome. Love it, love it, love it, love it. So there you go, guys. We have our immigration consultant. I know you're always asking questions in the video, and I'm always saying, I'm not an immigration consultant. So no, we have the person here with all the information. So come on with all your questions, get your questions answered at this time, right? So Makita, now tell us, what are the different routes and programs available to migrate here to Canada, especially now we're entering 2023?
2024-ish, Yuka. 2023 is all on its way out. We're getting to 2024. But yes, there are several different programs that are available to individuals who are seeking to move to Canada. So I'll start with those first. And then of course, there are also programs for those who are already inside Canada and needing to, you know, finalize their immigration process. So for those who are outside Canada, some of the programs that are in place are, one of the most popular route is through economic immigration. And economic immigration is where one would basically be sponsoring themselves to live in Canada. So programs like those include very popular, the Express Entry program, and also the provincial nominee programs. There are individuals who are coming in as entrepreneurs or business programs. So those programs are really looking at what an individual has to offer. So they are looking at their education, work experience, language ability, and just their entire ability to be able to, move to Canada, reestablish and integrate into Canadian society. So some of the things that they want to see that a person have is mostly post-secondary education. The more education you have, the better the opportunity is for you to immigrate to Canada. So those who may have a master's degree would be in a better position than those who would have a bachelor's degree. Same way a bachelor's would trump, a diploma. And so they're looking at your education, what you have to offer. They're also looking at your age. So the younger candidates are generally in a better position than those who are older, because, to be honest, Canada wants the youngest and it wants the brightest. So those who are younger are in a better position. And then they're looking at your language ability. Not that you know to speak English, but how well do you know to speak English? How well, can you perform on different language tests that you will have to take to judge your English ability. So they have those economic immigration programs. So if you have post-secondary education, really good language abilities, and you're young, you're in a good position for an economic immigration program. For others, then they have those who may already be inside Canada. So if you're outside Canada, you're looking at one of those programs, Federal Skilled Worker Program, and those all fall under the Express Entry Program. If you're in Canada as a worker, you'd be looking at the Canadian Experience class. So with that program, you would have to have had at least 1 year of work experience. And that 1 year of work experience now makes you eligible to use that work experience to apply. They're still looking at the other factors like your age and your education. If you have Canadian education, it will give you, put you in an advantage over those who may not have Canadian education. And then they have, those who are more in the trades. So they have the skilled trades group of individuals who are also eligible and can also apply. And then there is, so international students who will come to Canada and study, they would be looking at a program like Express Entry and the Canadian Experience class. So the idea is you study, you work, you gain the Canadian experience, and then now it is that you can apply for permanent residency. And then, there are other immigration programs. So for someone, example, who's in Canada out of status, they may be looking at a humanitarian and compassionate application. And then there are those individuals who are, seeking a refuge in Canada. They may be looking at a refugee program. But the most popular programs would be for individuals outside wanting to come in, the economic immigration programs, particularly the Express Entry, and then they have the provincial nominee programs where provinces, they select individuals based on the needs that they have, their labor market needs. So if they need more workers in a specific area, they will have a program that will be targeted at meeting those labor shortages. And if you have lived in a province, maybe you've studied there, they reward you with helping you to gain permanent residency. So those are really the popular programs and the common programs for individuals outside. And then there is family sponsorship, where a family member can sponsor another family member. So a Canadian can sponsor a non-Canadian to move to Canada to live with them permanently.
Wow, awesome. So see, guys, there are many different options. There is something for every age group, right? Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining in tonight. I see you, Vanessa, Sweet Pea, Pastor Hibbert. We see you. Thank you for joining. And purple, I don't know what that purple is, but thanks for joining. So we have a large audience here on the channel, recently subscribed, who are in their 40s and 50s. What program would be the most suitable for this age group, this specific population, 40 and above?
Okay, so for the 40 and above group of people, And it's good that you asked that question because, I mentioned earlier that Canada is looking for the younger generation. So a lot of individuals who are older than 40, have a more challenging time at being able to gain their permanent residence status to move to Canada. Because the Express Entry program, it's a points-based program, and it allots points for different categories: the education, the language, the age, and so on. And the challenge with that is when you hit 40, there's like nothing to gain on age. And you need those points for your age to be able to be eligible. So you may have, the level of education and you may have the good language skills, but if the age doesn't match up, you're still at a disadvantage and it makes it very hard for you to be eligible for any program. So those people who are older, of course, it doesn't mean that it's a no for you. Ways to improve your chances would be to study in Canada, gain that additional Canadian credential, and also being able to work post-school and gain some Canadian work experience. That puts you in a better position than if you are outside Canada, you're older, and you're seeking to move to Canada. Then there are the provincial nominee programs. If it is that you can get a job offer, it also puts you in a good position. So different provincial nominee programs, they have opportunities for international workers. So that would be those who are outside of Canada, that they could then apply for a job in Canada that they may see posted. And if the employer likes them and wants to hire them and they get that job offer, now they may become eligible for one of the provincial nominee programs. So even though they may look at Express Entry and because of age, it may look like, it's the end of the road, it's impossible, not necessarily. A job offer can make a big difference in that person's ability. Even for Express Entry, if you get a job offer, and it has to be an LMIA job offer, then you get additional points. And that can make you become an eligible applicant that would then become in the pool for the permanent residency. So for those who are 40 and above, key thing, want to try and secure a job offer in Canada. And yes, it's hard to get, but still try. Want to secure a job offer in Canada and maybe study and work in Canada, seek those opportunities, and those will also help individuals who are 40 and above to be placed in a position where they can then become eligible.
Awesome, awesome. There you go, guys. So all my 40 and above people here that who have been, concerned. I know one of the most popular videos I have is, should you move to Canada in your 40s and 50s? So that's a great answer for this population who are looking forward to move to Canada. So there is still chances, different pathways for you to come here to Canada, to move here to Canada. So there you go. That's the answer. It is still possible. You can move here to Canada. So say, for example, somebody come here with the student visa. How do you progress to move forward to getting your permanent residency with a student visa? What is the process involved in that part?
So for students, the process is, first you study, then you work, and then you become eligible to apply for the permanent residency. So a student has to go through their process of studying, completing their degree. And I should say, if you choose to apply for a student visa just so you can get to Canada, that route, and you don't go to school, you don't finish the program, unless it is that you gained a job offer, an LMIA job offer, and then you change from student to worker, you are in violation of the Immigration Act by not following through with your studies. So you want to go to school, you want to finish your studies. When your studies are done, you get the opportunity to apply for a postgraduate work permit. And as we're talking about this, one thing I want to mention, there are two types of educational system at the post-secondary level, and that is the private college and the public college. You want to apply to a public college. The fees are higher and the course may be longer, but if you don't attend a public college, you are not eligible for that post-work permit that you will get after studies. That is only issued to students who attend public colleges. So you want to attend a public college, finish your course of study, get your work permit, work, and then the work experience that you gain while working is what will then lead you to your permanent residency. One thing to note about the working with a work permit, it's not any job that will get you to permanent residency. You have to, your job has to fall within certain occupational classifications. And there's a whole chart online. If you should look up National Occupational Classification list, you will see the list there. Your job has to fall within certain tiers to be eligible to apply for the permanent residency when you are done working. So you want to make sure that you get the right job. If you gain at least 1 year work experience, you become eligible to apply. The more work experience you have, the better it's going to be for you. Work permits generally range from 2 to 3 years. And as I said, 1 year is the minimum that you need in the right job to be able to apply. So once you get your work experience that you need, then it is that you can then put your application together for your permanent residency. This is going to factor in all the things I mentioned before: your age, your language ability, your Canadian education. If you have foreign education, that is also factored in. And so that's one there to go with the express entry. And then there's also, again, the provincial nominee programs. Based on where you are working, your employer can support your application, and then you can become eligible through one of the provincial nominee programs. So for international students, that would generally be your route: study, work, and then apply for permanent residency.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for that in-depth knowledge about that part of it. So now that you mentioned, what are some of the areas of study that can guarantee that you get a work permit at the end?
Okay, so a lot of people are generally confused about what it is that takes them. I'm glad you asked that question. They're generally confused about what it is that actually takes them to the permanent residency. So for most of the economic programs, it is actually not what you studied in school, but it's the work that you were doing is what will determine your eligibility for the permanent residency. So there aren't specific areas of studies, but they recently did launch some areas in terms of work experience that will help a person with the express, they call them occupation specific groups, that they are looking at for express entry, that they are selecting applicants from those groups to apply for PR. So there are certain jobs, for example, IT. If you are not trained in IT, it might be hard for you to get a job in IT. So then you would want to study IT so that you can get an IT job, because IT is one of those fields that, you know, are one of those occupation in demand fields. So it's the health sector, RPNs, RNs, those are also an occupation in demand group. So if you study in those areas, which you would have to be able to gain a job in that area so you can have the work experience, it will benefit you. But in general, you can study in any area because your work does not necessarily have to align with your educational qualification, but the work is what is going to be looked at in terms of being able to apply for permanent residency. Because when you're doing the permanent residence application, you are putting yourself forward as, I am going to be this type of worker. These are the skills and work experience that I can bring to your country. So then I would like you to select me to become a permanent resident. So the education benefits you in terms of, yes, you have post-secondary education, but they don't really, focus as much on the type of post-secondary education as they will focus on the type of work experience that you're going to have.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, because I thought they were linked together also. So I'm sure maybe other persons might be thinking the same way, that they're somewhat connected, but thanks for clearing that up. So now, as you mentioned, so if you're thinking like, what are the jobs that you might be able to get after completing your study permit to get a work permit, then those are the areas of interest that you might be able to get a job. So now let's talk about, how do you apply for a work permit?
Okay. So that work permit question is a very good one and a very popular question these days. And it's so popular mainly because recently Immigration Canada released what they call a public policy that said visitors in Canada are eligible to apply for a work permit. A lot of people hear that and they get excited, but they don't focus on the rest of the information that is provided. So the process to applying for a work permit for Canada is the worker has to first find an employer that is willing to hire them, and your employer must be authorized to hire foreign workers. So the employer has to submit an application that is called a labor market impact assessment, short form LMIA. So a lot of people may have heard about the LMIA. So the employer has to get an LMIA. And what an LMIA is, it's a document that is issued to them by Service Canada. That's, the employer makes a case to say, I need to hire foreign workers to fill my job because I cannot find workers in Canada who are able to fill my position. So now I need to look outside Canada. So they have to put together this application, show all the efforts that they've made. And if, the reviewer agrees that they need to hire a foreign worker, that foreign worker, they'll issue to them the LMIA document. The employer now gives the LMIA document to the worker that uses it to apply for their work permit. If a worker applies for a work permit without the LMIA documents, your work permit is most likely going to be refused, because you've not established that you need to be hired in this job. Your employer has not established that. They don't have an LMIA. So an LMIA is what workers will need to get a work permit. Once you get an LMIA approved work permit, you can only work for the employer that got you the LMIA. You can't use it. It's not an open work permit. An open work permit is something totally different. An open work permit is only eligible for certain groups of people, and those would be spouses of students in Canada, spouses of workers in Canada, international students. They are eligible for an open work permit. And then, there is also, workers who are in certain situations, like vulnerable workers in Canada. Those groups of people are eligible for an open work permit, not all workers. And without the LMIA, other workers are not able to get a work permit. So that is the process that individuals will have to go through in order to get a work permit.
Okay, thank you. So now, does this new policy on work permit allow visitors in Canada easier access for work permits?
So what the change is with this new policy, and a lot of people don't realize, the requirements to get a work permit are exactly the same. However, prior to this public policy coming in place, individuals would have to apply for their work permit from outside Canada. So even if you were inside Canada and someone issued you, someone had an LMIA that they would give to you to apply, you would need to leave and then return. You need to leave, apply, and then return with your work permit. What the policy does is you don't have to leave. You can stay here. You can submit, as long as you're in legal status, you can submit the work permit application. And then now, once you submit that work permit application, they will process it from inside Canada. But people have become confused and they think that as long as you're in Canada, you can just apply, because now there is a, it's available to workers in Canada to apply for, visitors in Canada to apply for work permit. No, the work permit requirements are the exact same. You must have an LMIA, and then you submit your work permit application. It's just that you don't need to do it from outside Canada. Now you can do it from inside Canada. So people, don't be confused. And I've heard so many people that submitted the applications because somebody told them, oh, you can apply for a work permit now. There's a new policy in place. And they get refused because they did not have the LMIA. You must still have your LMIA to be able to apply for a work permit from inside Canada.
Wow. 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 Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, because with all these changes now, everybody assume different with different information. So again, thanks for clarifying this other dilemma that I'm sure a lot of persons are asking right now. So now, does studying in Canada guarantee a permanent resident status?
No, it does not. If the person doesn't go through the proper channels, you will study in Canada, and at the end of your studies, and of whatever time you're in Canada, you'll have to go home without permanent resident status. One, if you go to a private college and not a public college, you will not be able to get a work permit after. So you have paid all your thousands of dollars, you've studied, and then it is now, school is done, no work permit for you, you are going back home. Or you went to the public college and you were done and you were so happy to get a job. You just went to the grocery store, you went to Walmart and you just did cashiering, or you went to work in a factory because the money was quick and it was, you have that school fee that you need to pay off, or that loan that you borrowed and you need to pay it. So it's all about working. If you do that, no permanent residency for you. And that is if you're looking at channeling through study routes to get the PR. Yeah, if you are studying in Canada and you go through another program, for example, you get married and you get sponsored, or yeah, that would be the only other one. But if you want to go through the economic immigration route, you still have to make sure that you meet the requirements, the eligibility requirements, to be able to apply for the PR. And I always tell people, don't wait until your work permit is expiring. And this is for those who are able to gain the work permit post-studies. Don't wait until it's expiring to try and have a discussion about what do you need to do now to apply for PR. You need to do that from the day you arrive in Canada, and if not, as soon as school is done, before you start the work process, because many people don't know that not every job will get you to permanent resident status.
Wow, look at that. So here, guys, so once you hit the ground running, I would advise for you to contact Makita so she can guide you through the process, so you don't wait until after everything is done. You have your goals and you have everything lined up and you're fully educated and informed of what to do. So now, I will put Makita's information in the description so you can contact her for further information as you're progressing through this immigration process. So now let's talk about sponsorship. Can one sibling sponsor the other? How does sponsorship work?
That is a very, very common question. And one of the reasons it's so common, this happens in the US. Unfortunately, it does not happen in Canada. So family class sponsorship is very restrictive to the group of individuals who are eligible. And those are parents, so children can sponsor their parents or their grandparents, or parents can sponsor their children who are under 22 years old, and spouses can sponsor spouses. Sibling sponsorship is not one of the groups that are considered. However, there are some little ways around that, policies are in place for the exceptional situations. For example, if you have a sibling and they're orphaned and they're under 18 and both your parents have died, you can sponsor them. So that in that situation, you're able to sponsor your sibling. Another route is for, they call it the lonely Canadian. So if someone is in Canada and they don't have any family members here, they don't have a cousin, uncle, any family, they can sponsor a sibling. So if you're, say you came here as a student, for example, and you went through the process and you got, all your qualifications, and now you are a permanent resident, they're gonna, so there are, sequences in which immigration expects you to follow. So first they would want you to consider sponsoring your parents. But say your parents are dead, so you can't sponsor your parents. Then now it is that you could consider sponsoring your sibling. Or you don't have any siblings, you can sponsor any other family member, which could be an aunt, a cousin, an uncle, any relative you could sponsor if you are the lonely Canadian, meaning that you don't have anyone in Canada with you and anyone else that you could sponsor. You could go through the lonely Canadian. Or with a sibling, if they're orphaned, you would be able to sponsor them if they're orphaned and under 18. But outside of those, siblings are not a part of the family class sponsorship category.
Wow. Wow. So see, guys, here in Canada, we're different from the US. Canada does their own thing. Very different, very different. So now I have a specific questions. I'm not seeing any questions in the comments. Are you seeing any questions in the comments? I'm not seeing any there, but I have a question that someone had asked previously, but I have to read it from my phone. It's a long question. If my spouse and I are divorced and I have the legal custody of our child, can I relocate to Canada with that child, even if the father is refusing to give consent? Will the legal custody documents given by the judge be enough? Your thoughts on this one?
Okay, so for a parent to bring a child into Canada, whether there is, family law situation involved or anything like that, the requirement is that the non-accompanying parent has to sign what they call a declaration for non-accompanying parent, which is to say that the other parent consents to the child traveling to Canada. And that's required for all sponsorship where children are involved and only one parent is moving to Canada with the child. That's required for all applications. In a situation where there is a custody issue, I would say the parent can't take the child if the other parent doesn't consent to it. And not even that they don't consent, they're protesting it. They're protesting it, then the parent wouldn't be able to take the child. There are situations where parents can have children join them. And in a situation like those, the parents would have to show Immigration Canada that it would more be those situations where they can't find the parents. The parent is nowhere to be found. And in those situations, they would have to make a case to show that. They have to do an affidavit or a statutory declaration, but they would have to show that the other parent is non-existent and not able to consent to them taking the child. And in many situations, those cases generally go through and the parent gets the approval to take the child. But if one parent is protesting, so the parent said that they have legal custody of the child, full custody. So it may be a situation where, you know, depending on the nature, why it is that they have the other parent is fully out of the child's life, they may be able to. But in an application like that, I would definitely say that's something that we'd have to talk about the details of the case to make sure that we have all the facts correct, and then be able to inform that individual based on their specific situation. But as I said, you know, in those situations, Immigration Canada and every government these days takes those children situation quite seriously, where it is that one parent can take a child and leave with a child without, you know, another parent's consent. So I would say for that person, it would be best for them to, you know, consult with someone so they can get into the facts of their case, talk about the whole situation, why there is that custody arrangement in place and all of that, to then really truly make a decision to see if this is something that they would be able to get through with taking the child without the other parent's consent.
Wow, thank you for clarifying that again. Yes, I think I got a few questions similar to that one when it comes on to the father giving consent and all of that. So I hope this will cover all of those questions being asked. So now lastly, there are still no other questions in the comments right now. So now I think we'll go to our last question, which is, what are the major changes for 2024 when it comes on to immigration moving here to Canada?
Well, one thing for sure is that Immigration Canada has increased the immigration numbers in terms of, you know, they're making an effort to process more applications in the different immigration categories, economic immigration, sponsorship, even humanitarian and refugee applications. So one thing that they've announced is that they're going to increase the number of immigration applications that they're going to process. So the number of people that can apply and the number of people that can gain their permanent resident status. You know, outside of the effort to increase the numbers, there isn't any, they haven't really put forward any big, you know, change that is coming for 2024. But throughout the year, and they do this all the time, they will implement what they call public policies. And public policies are, you know, ways to get certain things in place without having to necessarily change the Immigration Act. But yeah, and they generally say they're temporary public policies. So for example, one public policy, you know, that came in place was that before, parents couldn't, if you didn't declare your child when you were doing your own application, immigration application, then you couldn't sponsor them at a later date. And then they came with a public policy that undeclared children could now be sponsored. So, and it's not a permit, so it's not changing the Immigration Act. It was just a public policy that, you know, this will happen just for a certain time period. And then after that, and then, you know, they came in with like the public policy where construction workers who meet certain requirements, out of status construction workers, that is, would be able to apply for permanent residency. So they do come up with public policies throughout the years where they will, you know, implement different things to address certain things in immigration. So for 2024, we have yet to wait and see, you know, what interesting public policies. I know international students are waiting and praying that there's going to be some public policy that's going to come out that's going to allow them to gain their permanent resident status. And that would be great. They have done that before. And it was amazing because many people who would not have had a chance at applying for their permanent residency was able to apply. So, you know, everyone is just waiting and keeping fingers crossed for different things like those that, you know, out of status people are waiting and praying that there is going to come some, you know, some change or some policy that's going to allow them to be able to apply for their permanent status in Canada. So right now we're just waiting to see, you know, what they're going to come forth with for 2024 and, you know, what classes of people the change is going to benefit. And, you know, we take it from there.
Right, right. That's awesome. Yes, because as you know, changes different. New year comes with different changes. So we're all waiting on the fence to see what are the changes for the coming year. So we do have a question from Vanessa. And the question is, if you have children and have fallen ill, are you able to sponsor a family member to come? Or would that just go through a visitor visa?
So if you have, so the sponsorship requirement stays the same in terms of who are considered members of the family class group, just like what I described before, that stays the same. So individuals would have to go through that process to bring family members in. So if someone is ill and say they need a caretaker to come in, it would have to go through a visitor's visa. So in your application, you want to make those grounds clear as to why the person is needed to come to Canada, the length of time, provide all the supporting documentation to confirm all of this. And they go through the visa application. Immigration Canada can be rigid sometimes, that people may be in such situations and they still decline the visa for their family members. But it's doing the very best to prepare a strong application and hope that they would be compassionate and allow that application to go through and to be approved.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And I see Vanessa said noted. So I think that answered her question as an under concern right there. So there we go, guys. Are there any other question? Okay, I see another one popping up. Can someone who is pregnant move to Canada or come to Canada and have the baby?
So there aren't any rules regarding being able to come to Canada and deliver a baby. People do it all the time. An immigration officer will not stop a person from entering the country if they're pregnant. So if they have if they meet the entry requirements of the country, then of course they can enter into Canada. And then if they choose to stay and have their baby, then that would be totally on the person. But there are no immigration rules or regulations surrounding prevention of allowing a person to enter if they're pregnant and preventing them from having a baby in Canada if they are in Canada and choosing to do so.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I hope that answered your question, Monique. Okay, and we have another question from Vanessa. If your application was rejected, how long should you wait to try again?
And I'm going to assume that Vanessa is talking about a temporary resident application, so that it's going to be a visa or a visiting visa or a study permit or work permit. There is no time limit. Like I always say, if you feel that whatever the reason is that they refuse your application is something that you can combat in a new application, then go for it. There is something that is called an access to information request. And I always recommend that when individuals come to me with refused applications, I always recommend that they do that. What it is, it's an application that is made to get the notes of the officer. I always recommend that they do that application to get the application notes that they can see why. Because officers sometimes will make additional notes as to why they refuse an application and be armed with information for the brand new application. But if a person believes that they can combat the refusal based on whatever reasons may be given, or if they get the ATIP notes, then I would say go for it. Put forward your new information and go. Immigration doesn't have any timeline. They usually say in refusal letters anyhow that if you feel that you whatever meet the reasons to apply again, you're welcome to do so. So I would say no timeline, and I do believe it's a temporary application. If it's a permanent application, as long as you meet the eligibility requirements, yeah, go for it right after.
Okay, there you go, Vanessa. Your question answered. Now we have a question from Gigi. Hope I get that right. Do all members of a group of 5 sponsorship have to be working?
And so a group of 5 sponsorship, I will say, we'll just explain for those who have never heard of it before. A group of 5 sponsorship is a sponsorship that is done for a refugee. So that's a group of 5 Canadians coming together to say that they are going to be sponsoring someone who has refugee status somewhere else and bringing them into their community, bringing them to Canada. So the group comes together and they're making a pledge that they are going to assist this person with their settlement process when they arrive in Canada. So I'll say this, Gigi, group of 5 refugee applications are not one of my areas that I really specialize in, but I am familiar with it just based on being in the field. So as far as I can recall, not all the members need to be working, but they want to see the information that is going to be put together from the group, that the essential elements are there to be able to sponsor that person, that when the person arrives in Canada, they will be taken care of for the whatever the timeline is that they are responsible for the person is going to be taken care of, and their settlement process is going to be supported by the community that the application has specified that they're coming into.
Okay, all right. Well, I hope that answered your question, Gigi. Very in depth. Okay, the next question is from Bushy Bashi. How can you get a work permit if you're on a visitor visa? And I think we addressed this question a little bit, but maybe let's elaborate on it a little bit more.
Yeah, so yeah, we addressed this question. It's exactly what I said before. You have to get an employer who has an LMIA, and that employer with the LMIA will give that to you and you will use that to apply for your work permit. But you can't just apply for the work permit without the LMIA approval letter. You have to get the LMIA approval letter from the employer who is pledging to hire you. And so they'll have to make the application for the LMIA. And then once they get, if they get the approval, they'll be issued an LMIA approval letter, which they will grant to you, the worker, who will then use that to apply for the work permit.
Okay, awesome. There you go. So we have all questions answered except Monique. Monique, I think we just answered your question previously about being pregnant and moving to Canada while being pregnant. What about being able to immigrate to Canada as a pregnant woman? So we did answer that question previously. Okay, so we have no further questions. So now, Makita, tell us where we can get in contact with you. What are the best routes to contact you? I know you're on Instagram, Facebook, and all over, but what is your process of consultation? Walk us through that process.
All right, so if you have immigration concerns and you need additional information, you can definitely find us on our social media, Instagram at Hibbert Immigration. You can find us on Facebook, Hibbert Immigration, and our contact email is info@hibbertimmigration.ca. So that's info@hibbertimmigration.ca, and you can visit our website. It's hibbertimmigration.ca, and we do have a contact form there on the website. And you can also reach us by phone, 416-606-2132. And if you do call us on the phone and you do not get a hold of us, you will have to leave a voice message, because that's the only way that we're going to know that you called. So if you leave us a voice message, and someone will get back to you. And if you're outside Canada, you can also, reach us on WhatsApp. We just ask for your patience in terms of getting back to you. So that's how you can reach us. Email us at info@hibbertimmigration.ca. Social media, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, by our phone line. And as I said, we're on WhatsApp also.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. We'll answer one question, but before we answer that, that one final question from Vanessa. Have you all subscribed to this channel as yet? Please go ahead and hit the subscription button right now and also hit the notification bell so you won't miss another of these series of thriving as immigrants, new and aspiring immigrants to Canada. And hit the like. You see the little like, the little thumb like this? Please hit it right now so others can see this information. YouTube can see that you're enjoying this content and share it with others who will also benefit from this content. All right, now let's go to Vanessa's question. Which province are better to get into as a student?
So every province is a good province to get into as a student. I always encourage people though, that if you can stay out of Ontario, try to, because I find that because Ontario is a very populated, most of it actually, by the way, because there's so many unpopulated areas or low populated areas in Ontario. But anyhow, the other provinces, the other provinces. So like, you know, looking at Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, you know, Alberta is a good one, but Alberta is up there too. You know, BC is up there too in terms of numbers, but those ones, and if you go like into the Northwest Territories, even better, because those provinces are the places where they're really trying to build a population and trying to get bodies in. So it may be easier for you to actually get an approved study permit out there. But then again, remember that an approved study permit is also based on, you know, all the factors that you are bringing to the table, you know, the ability to show that, because any temporary resident application, including a study permit, because it's supposed to be a temporary resident application, they're looking at the fact if you are going to leave, if you're likely to leave Canada at the end of your temporary residence stay. So if your application really demonstrates that, you know, you are in a good position. But provinces that are looking for bodies, like physical bodies, you know, I find that they tend to get higher approval rates. So, you know, those are some of the provinces that you want to look at. You know, Ontario is good, but the other ones need more bodies, so they tend to, you know, get good approval rates.
Awesome, 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 awesome. And if you're planning to move here to Ontario, especially Hamilton, I'm a licensed realtor here in Hamilton, Ontario. So I can find you a house for leasing, for purchasing, for selling, whatever your real estate concerns are, I can assist you. And you also find my information in the description box below. So there you go, guys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And please remember, if you still don't convince to subscribe as yet, then what are you waiting for? Make sure you subscribe before you leave this live tonight and share this video with someone who you know will benefit from this information. Thank you so much again, and bye for now.